Thanks for choosing my weekly podcast, Later That Same Life. I'm Larry Fedoruk, and week to week, topics, discussions, and stories from our lives.
Season 5, Chapter 10.
This week on my podcast, The Price of Gas. First, let's look at some of the biggest industries in the world by market value. And these dollar figures are based on recent data. Number one is actually not oil and gas. Number one industry in the world is, drumroll. Okay, no drumroll. Number one is the financial market. Makes sense, I guess. There appears to be more money in money than any other commodity. Once you get some money, we're constantly told to let our money make money for us. You work hard for your money, let your money work hard for you. What? Money makes more money. And like that's not a house of cards. Here's all the money in the world, and don't breathe on it, because it might collapse at any second. Well, since most of us don't have any real money, let's look at some of the other top-valued world industries. One of the biggest is real estate. The global real estate market is valued at between $3.8 and $4 trillion. That's not to say that if you managed to scrape together $4 trillion, you could own every property on the planet, but you'd get close. The old adage around real estate, other than location, is that you should buy real estate because God isn't making any more of it. There's a constant demand and a finite supply. Realtors and developers realized that a long time ago, so they started to build skyward. One piece of land is not 1, 2, or 3 units. It's hundreds of towering tiny condos. A 20-story complex just went up near me recently, and I remember walking by when they were just starting construction. I would look up at the empty sky above it. It really had no value except that it was a nice sky. And I would think, that space up there, I estimate about 6,400 cubic feet. It's just air and sky right now. But in about a year, someone is going to charge $2,000 a month for that space and for the dozens of other 6,400 cubic feet of spaces up there. We've cordoned off this part of the sky with walls and floors and a ceiling. And we called it real estate. I guess when you own the land, you own the sky above it. This is why the real estate business is one of the highest ranked market value industries in the world. The sky is the limit, and we all gotta live somewhere. Oh, and P.S. note to realtors, God isn't making any more sky either. Right after real estate is oil and gas. It comes in at about $3 trillion annually. And most of that, by the way, is Saudi money. Close behind is the global automotive industry, around $2.7 trillion. Most of that runs on oil and gas. After all that, finally, we get to food. Gee, that took a while. I'm starving. Food could rank higher, I guess, because agriculture is worth about $2.4 trillion, and food services and food retailing is worth about another $2.4 trillion. Gotta eat. Clothing comes in at around $1.8 trillion, closely followed by healthcare, and then pharma, and then, of course, the tech sector. That is constantly climbing its way up the market value chart. The smartphone industry itself is worth about $500 billion per year. And there you have it. That was a lot of numbers. Sorry about that. I mean, I love the numbers, even the ones I can't comprehend, like those followed by 12 zeros. A trillion. We used to think a million is a lot, and then billions became more common, and now we drop in the trillion like we know what it is. You know what comes after trillion? That's right, gazillion. Those are the top industries in the world. Seems about right, doesn't it? If you're lucky, you got a place to live, some food, some clothes, a car with some gas in it, and a smartphone. Oh, and a little money around in case you need to pay for a bottle of Advil. That's life.
That's life. That's what all the people say.
Much of the world's top valued industrial efforts are based on keeping us alive, getting the things we need. And the rest of it is based on trying to sell us things we might want. Ooh, what's this? A shower curtain with a pocket for my smartphone. Oh, same-day delivery. Place in cart. I'm getting that. In my last podcast, I talked about inflation. I talked about how the price of gas drives up the price of everything. That's it, really. Look around your home. There is probably not one thing in your house, including you, that isn't there because gasoline helped get it there. The extraction or harvest, manufacture, and delivery of every good and service requires fuel. The world's number one fuel? Fossil. We mine and burn our past to keep the world turning. Sooner than later, our past will catch up with us. It's catching up already. As I did last week on the podcast, let me make the distinction between the price of gas and the need for cleaner energy. We need the clean, green energy, or the world will end. Well, maybe not the world, but all the people, many of the animals, and most of the plants. Farewell, flora and fauna. Because remember, when we talk about saving the world, what we really mean is saving our own asses. And that's noble. Well, there is a few people we could probably lose, but I don't want to name names. Yeah, energy, fuel. We need it, and it doesn't matter what it is or what it becomes. Those things that we need most will automatically become the world's richest industries. Food, shelter, clothing, and of course, right now, oil and gas. We were supposed to wean ourselves off of it, and we've done a poor job of that. Now, oil consumption is down decade to decade, but not that much, because there's too much money in it. It's killing us, but look at all that money. Remember, money is the number one industry on the planet, and it's well ahead of oil and gas. The recent Russian aggression has really brought this home for many of us. Screw you, Putin. You gonna be that way? We won't buy your oil and gas. And then a lot of people asked legitimately, yeah, but how am I going to heat my home this winter? How am I going to drive my car? How am I going to keep my job at the factory? Well, yeah, easy, okay. We'll just start handing out those batteries. We'll turn on the solar panels and fire up the wind farms. Oh, what? We don't have enough of those? Hey, Vladimir, hope I wasn't out of line with that crack about screw you. You're supposed to wean yourself off oil with natural gas, and then wean yourself off gas with the nukes, and then get rid of the nukes with the wind and the solar. We did none of that. There are still people throwing coal onto the fire. As much as I applaud the Green Earth people, and I do my best to lessen my carbon footprint, our lazy society has actually left a big ass print, sitting around and doing nothing. Now we're in a situation here. Once again, we need more gas and oil. We could have learned our lesson the last time this happened, or the time before that. But we didn't. Supply and demand. The demand is on us. Some of that we can't help, We need the fossil fuel to live. Some of it we can help. We don't need to take the big oversized SUV towing the boat up to the cottage for the weekend, but we do it because we think we deserve the break. Demand is on us, supply is on them. Let's look at supply. Let's begin with who are the biggest oil producers in the world. I'll skip through and around the top 20 real quick. The big three are almost tied up at the top in the amount of oil production. But number one is, drumroll, oh that's right, no drum roll, The U.S. They beat number 2 and 3 slightly, but they also use a big percentage of what they produce. So there is that. Close 2 and 3 are the Saudis and then Russia. Americans are fond of calling Russia a gas station masquerading as a country. But I guess you could say that about the Saudis as well. When you compare the list of production against the list of consumption, USA, they are number 1 on both lists. When it comes to consumption, the Saudis and the Russians are down the list a little bit, and this means they have more to export. And that's what they do. It's how they pay the bills. This is interesting. 4 and 5 on the list are almost equal with each other in what they suck out of the dirt. It's China and Canada. China is number 2 in the world in consumption, so we can't just knock on their door and try and borrow a cup of oil. Canada, well, a lot of our oil is mixed with sand. We constantly argue about the pipelines, and we're a gigantic landmass without the infrastructure to get our oil to anywhere else in the world with any sort of expediency. Production, we are number 5. Consumption, we're number 9 in the world. 6 and 7, producers. Well, they are Iraq and Iran. Obvious political issues there. Then even if you go just past the top 10, there's oil production countries like Brazil, Mexico, and Venezuela. Again, I guess they could crank up production, but there's really no way to get it elsewhere in the world without great time and expense. Supply and demand, that puts us right back to the Saudis and the Russians. Russians, of course, currently a geopolitical nightmare. And the Saudis, well, they just won't do it. They say they are producing as much as they can right now. But I, and many others, find that very difficult to believe. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates are the only 2 OPEC nations with the supply and production capability and the infrastructure to get it to the rest of the world quickly. Increased supply theoretically drives down the gas prices, and the Saudis won't do it. Why? Lots of reasons. A political grudge involving 9/11 terrorist attack accusations, and more. They won't help yet. Biden is going to bite his tongue and head out there to see if he can change their mind. And remember, I said the U.S. consumes a lot of what they produce, but not all of it. American refineries could also crank it up right now. Biden has also asked them to help. So far, they're not.
Tom, let's talk about those record gas prices. Just this morning, the president taking aim at oil companies. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the president writing a letter to the CEOs of 7 oil companies, specifically saying that Vladimir Putin deserves the credit for this spike in oil and gas prices, but he is also calling on oil companies to explain their profits and specifically their refining reduction. Here's what the president writes. He says, essentially, at a time of war, refinery profit margins are well above normal and being passed directly on to American families, and that's not acceptable.
This all means that our price of gas is based on supply, demand, and greed.
The oil companies and the executives, they don't want to pump more oil, although they have every capacity to do so. Nothing is slowing them up from doing it if they want to. Why? Rather than spend the profits in the increased price of gasoline, they would rather take those profits and buy back stock, buy back their own stock, rather than take that money and invest it in pumping new oil. Not a joke. So don't tell me gas prices rose because I've slowed down the American energy production.
Supply, demand, greed. We as consumers only control one part of that, the demand. And actually, we only have a little control on that. Yeah, sorry, can't come into work today. It's the price of gas is too high. I'm calling in broke. Price of gas is not only a major cause of inflation, but then inflation becomes like this fire that feeds itself. Things cost more, we pay more, they cost even more to make, and up we go. If we can't control the upward spiral, then we'll come crashing down. Remember, it's all a house of cards. Just think for a bit about the liter of gas that you can barely not really afford. Fossil fuel. Each step that it takes to get that liter into a tank and into your car is expensive. And everyone along the way has to take a cut so that they can show a profit. Oil and gas is not a charity. They need to show a profit. Fossil fuel. First of all, you have to find it, and then you got to dig it out of the ground, even if that ground is at the bottom of the ocean. Then you have to pipe it out or ship it to a refinery. The refinery turns it into gas, or heating oil, or diesel, jet fuel, whatever. Then that has to be shipped to where it's needed, which is usually really far away from where it's found, and further distributed to the gas stations. Each step along the way requires many, many employees, including corporate ones who oversee the entire intricate system, and they work in large, expensive offices. And they have to pay everyone from the vice presidents down to the janitor and the cafeteria supervisor. Oh yeah, the industry provides a lot of jobs. They churn the economy. You know, boards of directors and investors also want to see a profit. And at some point, the governments want in. I mean, you need roads for all those vehicles, right? Well, we'll charge a tax on the gas so that the people who use the roads are the ones to help pay for the roads. I know it might seem obvious, but beginning to end in this life of a liter of gas, there's a lot of steps and each one costs money. Each phase has to show a profit, and then we pay. The world economy is just one big crowdfunding initiative. And let's not forget about the world's biggest casino, the stock market, where rich investors buy, sell, and speculate on everything, including oil. They have very little other interest in the fuel other than to see the price go up, so that their money makes money. The rich are gambling with our future. Well, at least they don't get free drinks or comp tickets to Celine, but they're still in that big casino gambling it up. Again, this reminder, the number one industry in the world is the financial industry. Ergo, if we were able to just get rid of gas and oil tomorrow morning, by the end of the day we'd be paying through the nose for a tank of hydrogen or a charge from the solar panel. Wow, can you believe the cost of wind these days? By the way, how many of those huge, unsightly white pinwheels are we willing to erect in order to feel better about ourselves? Oh, and here's the thing. World consumption of gas, and this is an average based on almost 200 countries. It's somewhere between 800 million and 1 billion liters of gas per day. That's from the lawnmowers to the Vespas, right up to the Escalades. 1 billion liters a day. Price of gas, what could happen? Well, we could ask big oil to cut back on their expenses and pass the savings on to us. Maybe they could fire some people. But, you know, those could be your neighbors losing their jobs, so we don't want that. We could ask the CEOs to make less money, maybe cut back on bonuses, be willing to accept a little less profit maybe over the next 2 quarters, but that too translates into somebody's money, so it's not going to happen. You know, the greed, the profiteering, and disproportionate wealth, those are all salt in the wound for the rest of us, and in the short run, solving those won't really solve the price of gas. It's back to supply, which means we need to solve the Saudis and the Russians. I noticed this time around we're not sharing a lot of those tips on how to save money at the gas station. Remember those? Overinflate your tires. Better mileage. When you're at the gas station, only buy gas. Don't buy any chips or peanuts or Coca-Colas, because that's how they make their money. That was a good one. What else was there? Don't buy gas on a Tuesday. Go first thing in the morning. Go the last thing in the day. Don't go to the same gas station all the time. Oh, there was a ton of them, and I don't think either of them saved any money for anybody. The price of gas is the price of gas. And I keep repeating this point. We do need to do better in cleaning up the planet. But whatever energy there is, the price we pay will always be a factor. Right now it's oil and gas. Only one thing will fix the price of gas. It's not any of those tips, and it's not a gas tax holiday. It's increased supply. Because it seems our demand is really not changing. Increased supply will help bring down the price, and that should ease inflation. Isn't that what we want? Scientist Roger Revelle, in a published paper, said that the oceans will simply not absorb all of the carbon dioxide released by humanity's industrial emissions, and that continued carbon dioxide emissions would have a significant impact on the world. That paper was published in 1957. That's the real price of gas. The dollar figure at the pump will go up and down, and we'll pay it or we won't. But the ravaged, destabilized planet, that's the real price we've paid. And that will continue to go up every day.
Later That Same Life is written, produced, and voiced by Larry Fedoruk. Larry Fedoruk, 37 at gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.